So, don't blink. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And I made that the title of my talk today because don't blink, meaning live in the moment, because you might miss something if you do. And life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, meaning don't always be thinking about tomorrow or next year or 10 years from now. Live for now. And that's my story, and that's kind of the premise for what I'm going to talk about today. And it's all about ideas, really. And I know everyone in this room has had an idea, but was afraid to talk about it, or talked about it so much but never did anything about it. And so my story is about an idea and how I got together with a friend, and we made something out of it. And it all happened 17 years ago when my 2-year-old daughter was going to partake in a Mother's Day Out program. And of course, she didn't know about it, and I had to do a lot of selling in the car on the way there. And when we got there, she really thought it was the dumbest idea ever and wanted nothing at all to do with this Mother's Day Out program. She was my second child, and she was excited about having time alone with me while her big sister was at school. But I kind of needed a couple hours twice a week to go run errands, you know, get some exercise, take a shower, just get some things done, and she wanted nothing to do with it. So the teachers were so nice, and they said, well, you could just sit right here in the mommy chair, which is like about this big. And I'm pretty sure it was really a timeout chair, but anyway, that's where I got to sit. And she eventually let go of my leg, and she started socializing more with other kids and having some fun, but she was always darting over to me to make sure I was still there. And so this went on for days and weeks. I sat in the little mommy's chair. And this was before cell phones. This is way before we had Wi-Fi. So I sat a lot and I thought a lot, and I had a lot of ideas. So I was sitting in that chair, mostly about getting out of that chair. But I was sitting there one day watching this one girl in particular who was the most confident girl in the class. She would come in every day with her little backpack and run into class, and she was just so confident. And I couldn't help but notice how she brought everybody together, and she was so much fun. And the next thing you know, this little girl's mother, who is now my business partner and lifelong friend, Susan Noyes, walked in the door with a cup of coffee for me. And she said, you know, I don't know you, by the way, my name is Susan, but I feel so bad that every day I leave here to run my millions of errands because I have 6 kids at home, and this little girl, Emma, who was this confident little girl, was number 6. And she said, I just feel so bad. So I went to go get a cup of coffee, and I just thought I would just take a guess at what you might like. And I thought I'd just give it to you so when you're sitting here, you would have something to do. So I looked at her, and she looked at me, and we just had this instant connection. And she decided she would sit there, and she pulled up another little chair, another little mommy's chair, and she sat there with me many days in the mommy chair because she felt so bad leaving me. And eventually, you know, Haley let me go, and then those Mother's Day Out programs turned into ballet classes, and then they turned into soccer classes, and now those 2 little girls are rising sophomores in college. So we had a lot of good idea time together. And what's interesting is we didn't talk about the typical thing that moms would talk about. We didn't talk about our families very much. We didn't talk about trips. We didn't talk about the news. We didn't talk about the weather. When we got together, we always talked about ideas. I'm sure many of you have those friends too who you get together and say, I got this great idea. But it's not everybody you do that to, but there are just certain people you feel really comfortable sharing an idea with. And that was Susan for me, and for Susan, and me, Susan. So over the years, as I turned out, I had 2 more kids. She was done. She was starting to become, you know, have more free time. And she said, you know, I have an idea I want to share with you, and it's going to be crazy, but I want to become a journalist. And I really need somebody to kind of bounce my ideas off of, but I'm really afraid to tell anybody else because they'll think I'm crazy. Because Susan was a labor law attorney who had taken time off to raise her family, but she didn't want to go back to that. But she had just been involved in so many fun parenting stories with raising 6 kids, and she had kept notes and notes and notes and notes, and she wanted to write about it. And she had some really funny stories. And she said, you know, living here in the North Shore, there are all these perfect families with perfect children that show up to church and synagogue with their perfect bows. But the truth is, they're not. And there's some really funny stories behind how they got there with their kids looking perfect. You know, they tripped on the steps and they're bleeding all over and they go to the hospital, but they end up at church and everything's all good. So she would write about those things. And so I was a lucky recipient of her first stories. And I loved them, and they were great. And I encouraged her, and she, on her own, went to a local magazine and said, you know what, I have some articles I'd just like to pitch to you to see if you like them. If you like them, great. If you don't, it's okay. And they loved them. And so she went back to journalism school, and she learned how to write, and she started cranking out these great stories. And they said to her, you know what, now we'd really like for you to become like a permanent columnist for us. And she said, oh, great. Well, that's fantastic. Let me think about it. And she came to me and she said, you know what, I've been asked to do this, and I don't know what to do now because it's 2007 and the market is tanking and magazines are closing and print is dying. And she said, if I put my heart and soul into something that's dying, then my column will die too. What do I do? So the world was changing rapid, quick. I mean, stuff was happening like crazy. The internet is exploding. Bloggers are on the scene. And she said, you know what? If I want my articles to live, I need to go live. I need to put them on the web. And how are we going to do that? We need to get a website. We need to set up a blog site. We need to get a domain name. We got to do it, but we don't know how to do it. And she looked at me and she said, will you please partner on this? I had a business background. She's now learned how to write. She said, together we could figure this out. But we didn't know how. I mean, we beat our head against the wall many, many days. But you know what? We went to friends, and we talked to friends who had good ideas. And we joined our most trusted friends together, and we called them our kitchen cabinet. And we relied on them for help and ideas. And so we didn't even know how to spell Wide World Web. I mean, we were just like, all right, we're going to try it. And we did, because of that one idea, to get these articles out so other parents can enjoy them too. And so Make It Better was born. We bought the domain name, makeitbetter.net, and we launched the website. And we had no idea what we were doing. It was a wing and a prayer the whole way. And I only say that just to, when you're sitting here, I know you're thinking about your ideas too, and you're thinking, I don't know how to do this, but you can. And our whole theme was based on the web. Everything was about the web. But you know what? I was at a dinner party not too long after we launched the website, and I overheard my husband saying to somebody, yeah, my wife's doing this, you know, this gig at Make It Better. It's her hobby job. And I thought, whoa. I do not like the sound of that at all. And he never said that again, by the way. But it made me realize we really have to create some serious revenues to be able to sustain this product. Yes, it's fun, and yes, everyone's loving the articles, and our readership was growing like crazy. But how are we going to be different than anyone else? And why would anybody want to advertise? And how do you even sell a page of advertising on a website like you would in a magazine? How do you talk to advertisers about advertising on the web? Nobody here knew about that, and nobody was doing it. So instead of just saying, well, nobody's doing it, we're not going to do it, we went back to school, and 10 kids at home at the time, and we monitored classes at Northwestern Medill School of Journalism, and we learned how to publish, and we learned everything we needed to know to barely get by, because that's what we were doing, barely getting by. But you know what? We were able to do it because our readers loved us and they responded. But we still had to be different, and we didn't know what about us was going to be different until our readers all wrote to us and said, we love you online, but you know what? We're not really ready for that yet. We want a print magazine. We love what you have, and we love that you write about community, and you write about family, and you write about lifestyle, but we want it in print. So we thought, but print is dying. How can we do this? But our readers wanted it. So back to our trusted friends and resources and piggybacking on lots of ideas. And it turned out that Susan knew someone at Medill who was running a graduate class that had to launch a magazine. So luck and timing worked, and they decided to take on our website and turn it into a magazine. And so Make It Better Print was born. And again, we didn't know how to publish a magazine. We had no idea. Back to school, back to classes, figure it out, bang our heads against the wall a bunch more times, and try to bring on some experts. But we couldn't, because we couldn't afford to hire anybody because we had no money. We needed to hire an associate publisher. Well, what is that? There wasn't Google back there to say, what is an associate publisher? But we knew we needed one because everybody else had one. And we needed an editor-in-chief. And we had just been pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, just trying to figure it out on our own and getting our friends to help us. But now we needed to go big time. But in order to do that, what do you need to succeed? a point of difference, something that makes you different than everyone else. And boy, you all know, because you get your mail, 1 million magazines and newspapers come in your mailbox, whether you want them or not, right? And many of them you stand over the recycling bin, hopefully you're standing over the recycling bin going, ch, 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 ch. And we didn't want our magazine to end up in that recycling bin. And our message was going to be to advertisers, if you advertise with us, it will not end up in the recycling bin. And our readers will see your brand and they will buy your product because we are going to make you stand out. And we did that by, again, talking to friends, getting ideas, listening to people. And what we found out was that you in this room, our readers, loved that we focused on philanthropy and in giving back on some level. And so we decided we had to make that a much bigger part of our business plan. So we then created a 501c3 not-for-profit called Make It Better Foundation. And through that profit, we partnered with over 400 not-for-profit agencies, not only in Chicagoland area, but globally as well. And we solicited sponsors like Walgreens and Wintrust, and they came on and they helped us to develop a product called our Philanthropy Awards. And every year, we give out 10 videos to grant requestees who need to get their mission beyond the doors of their community and beyond their constituents. So it's 30 501c3, I'm sorry, 30 not-for-profits later, and about $300,000 for those videos and $3 million in money raised. We were able to sponsor these not-for-profits, these 400 not-for-profits. Well, we needed to take it one step further because our readers really thought that was all great, but the fact of the matter is, how did it affect them? They still wanted to read about lifestyle. They still wanted to read about family. They wanted to read about where to go to dinner. So we couldn't put all our energy into that. So what we did was we decided that we would marry every advertiser who wanted to be involved in Make It Better with a like not-for-profit so that they could help get their message out in a way that was way beyond our magazine's pages and our website's pages. So think Builder, Habitat for Humanity, hospitals, Alzheimer's Association. So we married all of our not-for-profits with an advertiser, and our readers loved it. So we call that our virtuous circle, and that's what separates us from everyone else. And the only reason why we're able to still produce a magazine today in this crazy world of expensive print, when really magazines are dying left and right, and we're still putting out a magazine. And we actually just expanded into Chicago with another 20,000 addresses. So we're continuing to grow, and we're going to Make It Better to other markets, but we couldn't do it without our readers, without our not-for-profits, and without our advertisers. But you know what? We didn't know what we were doing. And I guess my point here today is take your ideas and run with them and have fun with them, because you don't have to know what you're doing. As a matter of fact, 40% of all entrepreneurs started to think about their idea when they were over 40. And between the ages of 55 and 64, most entrepreneurs are finally hitting their stride. That is when they really get going. And I think it's because 70% of them worked for corporations before they decided to become entrepreneurs. So by the time they were in their 50s, they thought, you know what, now I feel confident enough to take my idea and do something with it. And if Susan and I can do it, you all can do it. We knew nothing about publishing. You know, Susan, a lawyer, me having a business background, we had no idea, but we had a passion, and we had friends who supported us, and husbands who supported us, and families, and you know what? We just made it happen. So, you know, don't blink. Live in the moment, and don't be afraid. And when Denise called me to say, oh, by the way, Susan, who was supposed to do this talk, can't do it, and she said you're going to fill in for her. I said, what? This is not a meeting that I'm just going to for her. I said, Susan, I can't do this. I don't like public speaking at all. I'm not a public speaker. She's the one who does all of that, and I like to be in the background. And she said, oh, yeah, you can do it. Someone has got to do it, and you got to do it. And so I tried to distract myself by going into my email. Just going to go to my email. And my favorite newsletter had come through right at that exact moment. It was Divine Alignment. And it was my favorite quote email of the day. And it was from Eleanor Roosevelt. And the quote was, do something every day that scares you. So I decided I better do it. I got to do it. It's scary, but I'm going to do it. So even if your idea is scary, please just tell somebody about it and do it. And whether you're experienced or not, if I could do it, you can do it. Thank you.